In the last video and in class on Friday, we talked about the ways that we can prove triangles congruent without knowing all sides are congruent and all angles are congruent. And if you remember, one of the things that we talked about is this SSA. Okay, we had a problem where we knew that two sides and a non-included angle were congruent. Now, right now you are probably thinking of what SSA spells backwards, because we talked about that a good bit in class as well. And the main thing that I pushed on y'all was that if you have to cuss to prove congruence, then you can't prove congruence. Well, this video is about the one exception to that rule, and that is the hypotenuse-leg theorem. Now, when you think hypotenuse and leg, the first thing that should come to your mind is right triangles, because right triangles are the only thing that you know of that have a hypotenuse and have two legs. So, if the hypotenuse and leg of a right triangle are congruent to the hypotenuse and leg of another right triangle, then the triangles are congruent. Alright, so that would look like this. We would know that these two sides are congruent, the two hypotenuse are congruent, and we have the angle down here that is a right triangle. So if you look at these triangles and you look at the order that they're in, you will see that this is in fact SSA in both triangles. Or going the other direction, you know what it is that way too. But this is enough information to prove that two right triangles only, are congruent. So let's talk about why this is the exception. So instead of just giving you tick marks, let's give some measurements to these right triangles that we know are congruent. Let's say that the bottom one is 3 and the hypotenuse measurement is 5. And I'll even put the tick marks on here just to kind of keep us happy. Alright, since I'm saying that this is enough information to prove congruence, the reason for that is something that you've learned before. So you should recognize what I'm starting to write. That is, in fact, our good friend, the Pythagorean theorem. Now, you know that the Pythagorean theorem can be used to find any missing side of a right triangle given the other two sides. And I want you to look, and that's exactly what we have here. In both of these triangles, we know one leg and one hypotenuse. We can use that to figure out what our other side length is. So we know that it's legs squared plus legs squared equals the hypotenuse squared. Alright, so that's getting rid of the A, the B, and the C. We're just going to think about them as legs and hypotenuse. So I'm going to use the leg that I'm given as my first one, so that's 3 squared, plus, I don't know what my other leg is, so we'll call it a question mark, because that's what I've put in here, equals the hypotenuse squared, which is 5. Alright, so now it's time to do some calculating and figure out what our question mark length is. So I'm going to have 9 plus question mark squared equals 25. Subtract 9 from both sides. I get my question mark squared is equal to 16. Now, to get rid of a squared, you have to do the square root. That's the opposite. So we're going to square root both sides. Everybody knows that the square root of 16 is 4. So question mark equals 4. So I'm going to come over here and I'm going to put those where they go. Now, think about what we learned in our other theorems. You actually now know that all three sides of one triangle are congruent to all three sides of the other triangle. That's the side-side-side theorem. We don't have to even do that for right triangles. If you know that two sides or that, that one leg and the hypotenuse of one triangle is congruent to the corresponding leg and hypotenuse of the other triangle, you automatically can assume that these corresponding sides are congruent. You don't have to calculate it. That is the hypotenuse leg theorem. Now your practice questions are going to be over all of our theorems. Angle, side, angle, 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 side, 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 angle, side, and we're going to add in hypotenuse leg. When you're done with the form, make sure you go back to Google Classroom and click Mark as Done.